Josh and Anna, as you enter the sacred institution of marriage, do you commit to love God with all your heart, soul, mind? Joshua, placing yourself under the headship of Christ, faithful to lead Anna in the ways of the Lord as her priest, protector, and provider. Anna, placing yourself under the leadership of Joshua, submitting to his authority as his helpmate, being loyal, supportive, following his direction through Christ in your lives.
It's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a really good day. It is Monday, January 24th. I actually was out of power earlier today and I was like, it was so cold. It's 7 degrees. Thankfully, it was only out for about an hour, but if you're somewhere cold and you've gone through power outages, raise your hand. It is so awful and it's always just like, oh my gosh, when it's gonna come out. And always, every time it happens, I'm like, I need a generator. And then I remember I don't ever buy one every single time, and I still haven't. And so I probably won't remember to buy one this time either. So welcome back. We have an update about Anna Duggar and the Duggars, because you guys, I'm pretty impressed. I have a brand new source and I have some details that I would like to share with you, and I want to clarify before we go into any of this information. This source has asked to remain anonymous, but I've verified who they are, I've verified their connections, and I've verified that it's legit. So we talked last week about what another source had told me about Anna and a confrontation that she had gotten into with Austin, and how the confrontation had evolved around how Anna had pointed the finger at who? Carolyn Bates. Yeah, I think you guys were as surprised as I was. Like, Carolyn might be a lot of things, but not into what Josh is doing, right? Like, so unfair. So not only has Anna been going like pinging around and pointing fingers, but she's been deteriorating in her relationships with the Duggars. Now, this has been something we have talked about specifically on this channel, but it was really amazing to actually speak to someone very close who gave me a lot more insight about what's actually going on between Anna and the Duggars, and what they allege is sort of the undertones of how things are happening around the family at this point. So before the trial, it was kind of split on whether or not people believed Josh was guilty or not. So some were holding out hope that his story about it being the shady ex-con was actually true, and were wanting to believe that Josh was innocent. Unfortunately, many of them sat through the evidence, sat through the trial, and realized there was just so much proof that Josh had done what he did. And because Josh was pointing the finger at so many people, it made his siblings believe that he was probably trying to deflect the blame and not take responsibility for what he had done. So in the very beginning, Jim Bob was kind of telling people, no, it's the shady ex-con. I mean, he was telling this to his business partners. He was telling this to his friends. Even Josh, I was told by a source, when he was with friends. So if he were to like have lunch with a friend, or if he were to go and hang out with a friend, or if he was like spending time with people, that was the story that Josh was sticking to. So he was adamantly working to try to convince the people around him that it wasn't him, that it was Caleb Williams, that it was not him. He didn't do it. He trusted the wrong person. And it worked until the trial. And then the trial happened and everyone heard the evidence and they were just like, there's no way. No way. So once the conviction came down, it became very clear in the side of the Duggar house that the kids all believed that Josh was guilty. So the brothers and the sisters all agreed collectively that it was impossible for Josh to not be guilty. They said there was just too much evidence. And then Jim, Bob, and Michelle, who had been sitting on the fence and wanting to believe in Josh's innocence, went over onto the side of he's guilty. So I was actually told by a source that Jim Bob has confided in people that Josh is guilty. And Michelle feels the exact same way. So Jim Bob is flat out telling people, allegedly Josh is guilty, but this has actually got some of his friends kind of upset, I guess. So, and it also has Anna upset. So apparently, because they feel like, and I was telling you this before, is that Anna has this like feeling like, well, it's everyone against me and Josh. So now that you don't believe in his innocence, I hate you kind of thing. And I need to stay with my husband. So they're just trying to like support her the best that they can as she deals with these emotions. I guess some of the people close to Jim Bob are starting to reevaluate, like, why would Jim Bob at this point not sit down Josh and talk to him about what he's doing and the way that he's allowing Josh, through his attorneys, to drag in innocent people and blame them for his actions. Especially the friends of his that have been listening to him for years, just espouse all of their faith and how repentance and being honest about your response, being accountable for your actions and responsible and repentance, and not just taking accountability with God, but also taking responsibility for what you're involved in. And by allowing him to file these motions, even if privately he's saying Josh is guilty, they feel like it sends the wrong message to Josh. Like, you're saying to Josh, like, I don't care if you're think you're innocent. I know you're guilty, but we'll still let this all play out because it's face saving. And that's what my source says, is they think that Jim Bob is honestly now at a place where the only reason he's doing this is to save face. So he knows he's guilty. He knows there's no possible way that Caleb did this. He knows that Josh is the one that has done this, but he'll still go along with Josh and say, yeah, Josh, keep appealing, keep throwing everyone under the bus because maybe it'll stick and maybe I'll get my good name back. So I guess some of his colleagues or friends or whoever they are might be starting to think about having conversations with Jim Bob, although Jim Bob also might not be willing to hear it because Jim Bob is Jim Bob. And I've learned, again, that he's pretty good at telling and crafting different stories. So with Anna at odds with them and Jim Bob and Michelle, now, okay, Josh is guilty, but we're still going to support the appeals process. Now we're starting to see some of their friends who have been very loyal to them make kind of difficult decisions about what they're going to do moving forward with their relationships, and learning more about the deceptions the Duggars have played on them for years related to Josh and related to Jill and Derick. So one of the things that my source was telling me about was not only did this have to do with Josh and Anna, but one of the things that Jim Bob has been pretty adamant with his friends is that this whole idea that Derick and Jill have crafted in the media about how they were never paid for the show and that they never got a dime for him is just an all-out lie. So apparently, allegedly, he was telling his friends that Jill and Derick were paid and that Derick was mad at Jim Bob because he did not get the amount of money he felt he deserved. And so they hired an attorney because they didn't feel that they had received a fair wage. And that only after that did they get more money. And he made it seem like it was like he was so generous with them and so gracious with them, and that they were just sort of the ungrateful, unruly kids. And then he used the fact that they were able to purchase a house in cash as a reason to say, well, they were able to buy their house in cash. Of course they got paid by the show. By the way, they bought the house in cash after they left the show and after they got their attorneys, I believe. So when I was speaking to my source, I was like, so he's told people that Jill and Derick are lying, that they were paid, that Derick's just greedy, that this is the reason why everything happened. And my source said, yep, that's the story that he sticks to. And he apparently smears Derick and Jill anytime he can get. So I then, to flip, went to a source who knows the situation with Derick and Jill, and I flat out asked them, and I said, okay, so you know what's going on with Jill and Derick. Can you verify with me if Derick and Jill are lying about whether or not they were paid? And was Jim Bob paying them, but Derick and Jill felt they would deserve more? My source said that absolutely they were not paid, that Jim Bob did not pay them, and they did not go through the attorneys under this idea that they would get more than they deserved or that they needed more than what Jim had given them. They were adamant that what Jill and Derick were saying publicly is the absolute truth, that they were not paid while they were on the show, that Jim Bob told them for a period of time that they weren't even making money on the show, and that the only way they ended up getting paid was because they brought in a lawyer. Now, I was also told that Derick was actually never paid. So the source went on to say that the payment ended up going to Jill, and the payment only ended up being the bare minimum under the law that Jim Bob would not have been able to dispute or lose in court. So what they did is they looked at all of the hours that Jill had been working on the show and all of the, from the wedding to all of the filming she had done over the years. And they looked at it from a minimum wage perspective. So they took the hours that she worked and then said, well, if we just look at the basic minimum wage, this is what you would owe us. Knowing at that point that they would not win in court, that's what apparently he ended up settling on, because it was the least amount that they could legally show that he would have owed, and they wouldn't have had to go through with a trial. So for those of you that are wondering, like, well, why don't I ever find court documents on this? I was told by the sources because it never had to go to court, because they agreed to settle for a very low amount just to be done with it. So no, they didn't get money from Jim Bob from the show. They only got it after they hired the lawyers, and it was only after that that they were paid minimum wage, and less than because they had to pay attorney's fees on top of that. Can you imagine having to go through all of that just to get paid? Now, that could have changed how Jim Bob worked in the future, because some of the boys did end up getting some money from the show or given opportunities to flip houses, and some of the kids did get paid after what he went through with Jill. But I think what he did was, in order to calm people down, he had to craft this narrative that it was a lie, okay? So a lot of the people now around Jim Bob are starting to wake up to the fact that he will lie about things that are just not even worth lying about. Like, why would you need to lie about Jill and Derick in this situation just to, like, save face with your friends? Well, it's important for him to look like a trusting, like, honest business person that would never take advantage of his children. Like, that's his image. And not paying your children while they're working for you doesn't match that image. So now with that information, now more and more people are starting to realize that Jim Bob is kind of a liar. Jim Bob and Michelle and Anna are, like, completely divided now. Jim Bob and his friends are starting to be a little bit more at odds, and some people that have been loyal to him are starting to wonder and reevaluate their thoughts about whether they want to be involved in this situation or not. Which gets me to the final part of this video, where we talk about what it means to have come up on the Duggars name and then the fallout that's happening now. So one thing that's happened is that a lot of people came into this when they came onto the show, and they were on a show either as guests, as co-stars, as sometime stars. You know, you think of all of the different friends that were on the show throughout the years. Like Laura would show up every now and then, Sierra, you would see other friends, even the Bates would sometimes guest star on there. You would see like the Caldwells, various people from their churches, in-laws. So you saw all of these different people, his sister, his niece, that were on the show, and that as long as everything was going great, they had no problem being on the show. And so all of these people were able to create a level of success off of that name. Now, there's a lot of questions for all of the people involved. Did you know, one, about what was happening? And even if you didn't know, one, what was happening, did you know about the other stuff? Did you know about the corporal punishment? Did you know about the cult aspect? Did you know about the horrible things that were happening in this house? And did you bypass and stop looking at that because you saw an opportunity to make yourself famous? So some people now are having to deal with that fallout, and it's unfortunate because it's affecting people that aren't Josh Duggar or Jim Bob, and it's a ripple effect. It's affecting the kids that are in the family, it's affecting extended family members, and it's affecting friends, it's affecting friends of friends. It's like this, the house of cards has come down, and so all the people that were up there and we're feeling good with them. You can have a lot of yes men when everything's going great, but when things fall down, all those yes men's go away because all of those benefits they got are gone. And then they have to wrestle with their own hate that they're getting online, which has been it's so sad to me that all these different people are getting so much hate that they don't deserve. Jim Bob's yes men world is starting to crumble, which I guess is a good thing, right? You have the new series coming out by Amazon, which is going to likely be exposing a lot of really disturbing aspects about the IBLP and the connections between the Duggars and the IBLP and all of that. And now you see friends trying to distance themselves. You're seeing family members trying to distance themselves. You're seeing this huge network of people around them starting to reevaluate. And you really just start to wonder, at some point, will there be something more that comes out of this? Will there be other criminal charges? And that was one thing that my source brought up. And they said, they even brought it up. I didn't say anything. They were bringing up that, the Duggars actually thought that their phones were being tapped, allegedly. So I guess paranoia is so high because of what has happened with Josh that they now feel like the feds are watching everything that they do. They feel like all eyes are on them. They feel like, Jim Bob apparently was telling people that like he thinks they're listening in on his phone calls, which it's really expensive for them to do that kind of monitoring unless they have some real reason to do that. So I don't know that that would be true, but it sort of speaks to where they're at. But my source did say that if they're going to find anything with Jim Bob, it's going to be financially motivated. It would come likely within his taxes or his business dealings. But even that, they said, might be complicated to unravel because he has so many different revenue streams. And they said, if you think that this is going to financially collapse Jim Bob, they said that they don't think it will because there's, again, so many different revenue streams that he's invested in over the years that he has so much money coming in from all these different pockets of areas that they don't know that it'll actually hurt. He won't have the same kind of money coming in, but he also still has businesses that he's running. So they might have to adjust to how they're living, but they said don't expect him to go broke. He still has millions of dollars. But the Duggars are paranoid that something else could come, which makes me kind of wonder, are the feds watching the IRS? Are they being audited? Are their tax people looking around? That I don't know. So if you're waiting for another shoe to drop, I think the Duggars, from what my sources are telling me, are just as paranoid and concerned as some of the other people that are watching, thinking that something could happen. And for that, I can't say yay or nay what will happen. So for now, that's what I've got from the source. I have an update later about John and Abby's crash because I got a lot more details about that. And I just want to know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Bye, guys.